So tell me about, I'm going to be a Canadian again today. Tell me about the small plan versus the large plan in the Constitution. Remember that, Lindsay?
Yeah, the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan.
Virginia, New Jersey plan. What were they about? What did big states want? Because under the Articles, what type of Congress was it? Unicameral with one vote. What did Virginia want?
They wanted bicameral based on population.
Based on population. What did New Jersey want, Tiger?
Everyone's the same.
They wanted essentially the same thing as the Articles. Why would New Jersey want that?
Because they're itty bitty.
Because they're small and it would help them, right? It gives them an advantage because they have a small population. So what ends up happening in the end, Sweeney?
They had a compromise.
The Great Compromise, right? And so what we have now is, because of this compromise between large states and big states, where we have a Congress that is bicameral with the upper house being the Senate, right? Every state has two. How long are senators in office for? 6 years. Test notes. How long are people in the House of Representatives, called congressmen? How long are they in there for, Tess? 2 years? Good. So Congress, the House of Representatives, is more responsive to the people because they have to be reelected every congressional cycle, right? Where a senator, sometimes called a cooling off chamber because you don't have to be as responsive. Sometimes do people want stuff that isn't good for our country? What if individual states got the right to vote to get rid of slavery? How long would it have taken to get South Carolina and Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi to get rid of slavery? Yeah, like 1972 or something, right? So what ends up happening is the Senate is able to consider things a little bit more deeply because they don't have to worry about re-election as often. Does that make sense? So you have the upper house, the lower house, and then the presidency is going to be much, much different. Okay? The executive branch is going to be a strong executive branch. The executive branch is going to have authorities that is, I mean, obviously in the Articles there was no executive branch. Now we have a strong executive. What can the president do? What's the number one thing the president has power of?
Veto.
Well, the president does have veto power, but he is or she is commander-in-chief of the armed services. There is an armed services, and the president is commander-in-chief of those armed services. Now, this is one thing that other countries don't always necessarily have. Oftentimes they have a president, and then they have generals who are over, so the president will be over the government, and then the generals will be over the military. Why was James Madison's plan to put the president over a civilian over the military ingenious, do you think? Somebody has an answer. Albania, why is that a good idea to have the president, a civilian, be over the entire military structure? Why do we think that would be a good idea?
Because if the military guys are like over it, then they can overthrow presidents.
Do you think in some other countries military leaders overthrow presidents?
Yeah.
It happens a lot. So what Madison did was he allowed the president to have controlling power over the military. And military leaders oftentimes aren't happy about this, right? Because you have presidents like President Obama or the first president or the second President Bush who really have no military experience and are telling four-star generals what to do. But that's okay. Now, when they wrote the Constitution, do you think they had a guy in mind for who they thought was going to be the first president?
Yes.
They knew Washington was going to be the first president. They also knew that Washington had a military background. They also knew that he was not overly aggressive and would set the precedent for being under control with his powers. Also, the president has veto power over legislation. The president appoints what we now call cabinet members, right? So the president has a lot of authority, and the president that can appoint judgeships, right? So federal judges are appointed by the president, ambassadors are appointed by the president, and they can veto legislation, as you mentioned, and they're also elected by electoral college. What I thought I would do to explain electoral college, because I think most of you get it in general, but just in case, this is actually the 2012. This is the 2012 actually final electoral map. Okay.
Well, look, Florida finally decided.
So this is 2012. Red states are for Romney, blue states are for Obama. All right. Now, every state has a set number of electoral votes, right? How does a state determine how many electoral votes the state gets.
The number of senators plus the number of.
Senators plus representatives, right? We mentioned that the bigger the state, the more popular the state, the more representatives you have, right? So, for instance, California has 55 electoral votes, and Wyoming has 3, right? Their population is the smallest in the country. They have so few people, they just have 1 congressman. It's called a congressman at large, right? That is an awesome title. Congressman in general is not a bad title. All right, it gets you into some restaurants. All right. I use it sometimes. I'm Corey Sayer at Party 4. No, you're not. I'm Congressman Sayer. Oh, right in. I've never done that. It's actually illegal to impersonate an elected official, but it'd be awesome to get arrested. Okay, now look. Based on this, Obama won by a pretty considerable margin electorally. But if you look at the states, they pretty much won about a similar amount of states, right? But what's the problem for Romney?
He got a lot of Midwestern.
Many of the states that he won do not have larger populations, right? And so what happens is, in this electoral college system, the reason why every state has a set number of electors, right? Kentucky, how many electoral votes does Kentucky have?
6.
Nope.
8.
We have 8. We have 6 congressional districts and 2 senators, right? So we have 8. So we literally, originally Kentucky had more. We've lost population relative to everybody else. But when Kentucky voters go to vote, let's say there's 2 million people in Kentucky who can vote, and let's say that Tevis is going up against O'Banion, all right? And let's say Tevis gets 1,000,001 vote, and O'Banion gets 999,999. So Tevis wins by 2 popular votes in Kentucky. How many of the 8 electoral votes does Tevis get? He gets all 8 electoral votes. So what you need to do is win each state, right? And those 8 electors literally go to Washington and officially cast the 8 elector votes for Tevis. So now what should your question be?
Can those people do whatever they want?
Yeah. What if they're like, no, Tevis is a moron. I want to vote for O'Banion. The answer is, theoretically, yes. The Electoral College system was designed because the Founding Fathers feared popular democracy. They were like, Tevis, what if the people elect a raging moron? We need to have educated people who can actually vote for a more reasonable candidate. Today, so for several elections in the past, actually quite a few elections, let's say there's 8 electoral votes in Kentucky, maybe 4 of them are like, nope, voting for O'Banion. Even though people of Kentucky said to vote for Tevis. Today that doesn't happen. Now each party sends their own people. So the Republicans will have 8 people nominated, and the Democrats will have 8 people. So for instance, Kentucky went Republican in 2012 election. So the 8 Republican delegates went to officially cast their votes for Mitt Romney, right? But this system was designed to make sure people who don't know what they're doing, is like an insurance policy. Is it possible to become president and actually lose the popular vote?
Yes.
Can you get more electoral votes than your guy?
Not out more.
Yeah, actually, it's actually happened 3 times. It's happened 3 times. There are 538 possible votes. Now remember, how many congressmen are there in the country? Do you remember from yesterday?
135.
435. How many senators are there? 100. That's 535. Where are we together 3?
Oh, Hawaii.
Hawaii's a state.
Puerto Rico. DC.
D.C. Washington, D.C. is not in a state, but it does have American citizens with voting power. They get the electoral votes. They didn't always get that, by the way. So, so what happens is, Al Gore is a good example. In the year 2000, Bush, with 530 electoral votes, you need to have 270 to win. If you don't get 270, like let's say there's 3 candidates, let's say there's 2 candidates, and they each get 269, what happens? The House of Representatives votes. What if there's 4 candidates, and one gets by far the most popular votes and by far the most electoral votes, but doesn't get 270? What happens then? The House of Representatives still get, somebody has to get 270. Now, in the year 2000, Gore won the popular vote by over 500,000 more than Bush, but Bush won the very, very contested electoral vote, right? In fact, it was 538 popular votes in Florida that swung it. So had 270 of those people actually switched their votes, Gore would have been president. That's how close that election was. And today, really, you didn't see a lot of ads for the presidency here. If you lived in this part of Florida or Ohio, you couldn't turn a TV on without seeing a presidential ad. Why not? Why did no one really bother advertising in Kentucky?
Because it's Republican and they can't really do anything about it.
Because everyone knew it's not as Republican as people think. It's more anti-black than it is Republican, right? I mean, like the Clintons carried it both times, or Clinton carried it both times he ran in '92 and '96. Hillary Clinton's wildly popular. Bill Clinton's wildly popular in Kentucky. But Obama won. West Virginia was very Clinton. But with Obama, he got killed in these two states. And there are some states like Texas. If Jesus was a Democrat, they wouldn't vote for him in Texas. And the same thing goes in California. If Jesus was a Republican, they wouldn't vote for him in California, right? So Obama did not waste much money advertising in California. And Mitt Romney did not waste much money in Texas. Now, I will say Texas was closer than they thought it was going to be because there's an increasing Hispanic and black vote in Texas, which gave Obama a little bit more chance. They tend to trend. African Americans have always trended Democrat. It's actually the most loyal Democratic base, not just because Obama is African American. Bill Clinton got 97% of the black vote. Hispanics actually were about 50-50, but the Republican Party has done a very poor job with Hispanics and have very much trended towards Democrats in the last two elections. That's the real money thing. Republicans are not going to get black votes, but Republicans can get Hispanic votes if they sort of change their policies. But their policies last time were round up Hispanics and throw them back to Mexico. So guess what most Mexican Americans did? They voted for Obama. And it killed Bush. Or sorry, it killed Romney.
I was like 97% of them voted for Obama.
Yeah, I mean, and people are like, you know, it's just because he's black. It's not. The Republicans should have been smarter. The Republicans should not have been aggressively, I'm going to send your mama back to Mexico. Woo, no, vote for me. It's hard to get someone to vote for you when they're scared of you coming around them, right? Republicans now, if you have noticed, have really reached out and tried to change some of their policies towards Hispanics. Is that because they just got sweeter 2 days after the election?
No.
No, it's because they're smart, right? They know they need to pick up these votes. If you look at the American trending, Hispanic Americans are a larger population than African Americans are increasingly getting larger. So they have to pick up those votes. It is theoretical, by the way. See what the number is on that thing. It is theoretical, by the way, that you could win 11 states.
13 minutes.
Okay, sorry, stop. You could actually